Hi guys, I hope you're well. Welcome to episode 7 of Tiger Heart Chats. We've had such a great response on the last few podcasts. So many people are sending us messages via Twitter with regards to their questions and their thoughts. If there's anyone out there that's listening and they want to send a message, just tweet to me on Tiger Heart Chats, all one word with the hashtag. I've got a wicked guest for you today. He's someone that I've been trying to lock down for this podcast for a while now. He's a very busy chap. Please welcome to the stage the wonderful Andrew Bloch.
Thank you, Sanj, for that wonderful introduction. And I apologise that it's taken me so long to get onto your podcast, but I'm pleased to be here.
Brilliant. It's so good to have you here. You're an amazing energy, and I know there's a lot of people listening that will get a lot of value from what you're saying. There's some people that don't know much about you. Why don't you give us a brief introduction as to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Andrew Bloch. I'm one of the founders of Frank, which is creative communications agency. And I recently became a non-executive at the agency and am now consulting in the marketing and creative services space.
Brilliant. And how long has Frank been going for?
Frank has been going for 20 years, which is hard to believe. I sometimes don't feel old enough, but sadly I am.
You don't look it, dude. You look like you're in your early 20s.
Very kind. The grey hairs are coming quick and fast.
What is the function of Frank? Like, what does it do?
So, fundamentally, Frank's a PR agency, but PR it's an amazing thing, PR. Like, however long you're in it, I never find it particularly easy to explain what PR is succinctly, because essentially PR can do so much, but really it's all about working for brands, organizations, people, and helping them communicate what they want to communicate. And Frank specifically has always had an ethos around this word talkability, which is a registered trademark of the agency. And talkability, we believe to be the most powerful form of marketing. And it's essentially where you get people doing your best marketing for you by talking, sharing, retweeting, whatever it might be, about your campaign. So right at the center of everything we do for a client is a creative concept that has that power to get people spreading the word for you. And then the way that you bring that to life could be sort of traditional editorial media coverage, could be an ad campaign, a sponsorship, social media campaign, whatever. It doesn't really matter. The important bit is having a creative idea right at the center of what you're doing that will grab people's attention, get them to sit up, take notice, and start to spread the word, change their opinion, get them to buy something, whatever it might be.
Amazing. And so Frank's been running for 20 years, but how long have you been in the industry for?
I've been in the industry for, coming up to, or just over, around about 25 years. So, I mean, I was actually relatively inexperienced when we started Frank, and the kind of short version of the story behind it is I started my career at an agency called Lynn Franks, which was very, very famous PR agency in the 80s, 90s. It was actually the agency that Absolutely Fabulous was based on. And there was a fair degree of truth in it. It was a crazy, crazy place to work, but probably like, I always look back and think, wow, amazing I landed there. It was like the perfect agency for me, which was much more luck than judgment. And I stayed there for a few years, and then Lynn Franks actually got bought by a big global agency called Ketchum. And the brand sort of disappeared over time. And I'd been at, I mean, I loved my time at Lynn Franks, loved my time at Ketchum, and about 5 years in, the guy who was the managing director of Lynn Franks, who had left at the time of the merger, the acquisition, came to me and said, do you fancy setting up a PR agency? And I'd always respected him greatly. We got on brilliantly. We'd remained friends when he sort of left Lynn Franks and I joined Ketchum. And I said to him, look, I love the idea, but I don't think I'm ready. And he said to me very wisely, and something I'll never forget really, is you will never feel ready. Like, just do it. You'll be fine. I wouldn't be asking you to do this with me if I didn't think you could do it. And so I said yes. And I kind of my viewpoint on risk is I always kind of just think through what's the worst that can happen. And I had this sort of thought process in my head, like, okay, I'll give it a go. If it doesn't work out, I can sort of come back with my begging cap to Ketchum and say, have me back. I was stupid. I wasn't ready to set up a PR agency. And I thought through that process and kind of figured out, look, it really isn't that much of a risk. And I'm young. I was 26 at the time, didn't have a family, didn't really have any responsibilities apart from putting food on the table for myself. So I thought I'd give it a go. And I never really ever thought through what Frank could become and might be. I was just thinking, well, if it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world, which I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but that's how it all started.
It's a total good thing. So many people feel restrained to kind of explore their volition because they're worried. And I think that's a fantastic line of advice from you to anyone that's starting off in the PR sector is, you'll never be ready. So just do it. That's fantastic.
Not just the PR sector. I mean, I think in anything, and then 20 years later, just sort of fast forwarding the story rapidly, it was part of a transition of the agency, but I felt that I was ready for the next stage in my life. And God, to leave behind the agency that you founded is such a hard thing to do. And I haven't actually left completely. I'm still a non-executive, so I sit on the board and do the board meetings. I'm still a shareholder, but I wanted to challenge myself and free up my time so I could do other stuff. And one of the things that when I was at Frank, I would get all these opportunities and these conversations, and I just didn't have the headspace, or actually potentially wasn't able to do it because I was doing a full-time role and I was just letting them go. And I thought, it would be brilliant to just have the spare time to be able to take these opportunities, pursue other things, do more of a kind of portfolio type of career. But when you're 46, which is what I am now, that's really hard because all of a sudden you've got a big house, you've got kids, you've got, huge outgoings compared to what I had 20 years ago. And again, I guess I went through the same thought process. What's the worst that can happen? The difficult bit about it is probably the worst that can happen is more severe than it was 20 years ago because I don't know how employable I am. I don't know whether I would want to work or can work for someone else. So the decision, was actually infinitely harder. And I'm only actually, I think this is week 3 of the next phase of my career, but I'm loving every second of it. And it's given me a whole new energy and passion for just business, creativity, life in general. So I might not be saying the same in a few months' time, but for the time being, so far, so good. But these decisions are never easy. I don't think anyone makes a big career decision lightly, and I don't think you should. But sometimes you see these, sort of like career entrepreneurs that go from success to success to success, and you think, wow, that's amazing. But I'm sure that behind each of those moves, they've also sort of almost tortured themselves in terms of, should I do it? Should I stay? It's quite hard when things are going well for you to leave that behind and take a risk to do something else. It's much easier just to take the easy route and carry on. But I've always thought that you've got to keep challenging yourself. And Frank was not boring to me. I genuinely feel so blessed to have found a career that I love, going into work every day and doing what I do. And of course, you have the days, everyone does. But generally, I absolutely loved it, which is you should never take for granted. But at the same time, I've always wanted to push myself, to achieve more, to take myself out my comfort zone. And that's really what drives me, I think.
I didn't know that your sidestep within Frank was quite a new thing. I thought that was something that had been around for a while. So, you mentioned that it feels liberating. It's great. Talk to us about some of the emotions that you felt before you made that decision and where you are now.
Well, it wasn't something that was decided overnight. So myself and the other founder, a guy called Graham Goodkind, sort of set up the agency. 7 years into Frank, we actually sold the agency, and we sold 100% of it to an Australian marketing services group called Enero. Yeah. Was a great deal for us personally. And part of the reason we did it was because it was, I guess, too good to turn down on the one hand, but also they felt like the right partner. They were physically on the other side of the world, which I always saw as a bit of a benefit. And they didn't want to disrupt the culture and the ethos and the brand that we'd built, because they recognized that's what they'd bought. That was the value of the agency they bought. So they left us to get on with the running of it. And it never really felt like we'd sold it. We had, from a financial point of view, but from an emotional point of view, still felt very connected. And we had an earn-out deal where, you know, we were incentivized over a period of years to continue to grow the company. And then when that earn-out deal came to an end, actually what happened is they released a chunk of equity back to the directors of the business. So all of a sudden we found ourselves owning part of Frank again, which was amazing. I mean, it was not something that we'd ever expected, but they recognized that they wanted to keep us incentivized. They wanted to keep us in the business. So that was great. Graham, who is slightly older than me, I won't reveal his age, but there's a small gap. He, about 2 years ago, decided, went through a similar thought process to me, really, and decided he wanted to step back and be able to do other stuff. And I guess to a certain degree, the agency had developed, there was great people there, didn't require him as much, which is exactly the same as with me. So he became part-time chairman, went down to sort of day and a half a week. And at the time, we had this sort of conversation, should we both do it together? And I I love Graham. Graham was a great mentor to me, and he'd been by my side throughout the Frank journey. And I was sort of, should we do it together? And Graham was quite cool with the whole thing, and he didn't really know exactly what he was going to do. And I sort of said to him, I just don't want to just give something up with nothing planned to go to. I don't feel ready for that. And there was a part of me that thought maybe it's a bit too much for Frank, and if both of us would sort of step back at the same time, it might be too much too soon. And then there was another part of me that was just sort of curious to, like, what would it be like running it on my own? I've always had Graham as my wingman, and we're a brilliant team. We complement each other skills wise. So I thought, you know what, let me sort of carry on and see what it's like. But I knew that, and we'd discussed it at the time, it wasn't going to be forever. There needed to be a time when we both stepped back and let the next sort of generation of talent within the agency take it on in their own direction. And I absolutely loved the period without Graham, because it was something different and fresh. And, all of a sudden I didn't have that person by me minute by minute to discuss stuff with. So I made, in conjunction with other people, some slightly different decisions that maybe I wouldn't have if Graham was there. And it was great. But I knew this time was coming, and it was in my head for, all of that period. And then at the beginning of the year, January-ish time, that kind of process you sometimes go through where you think about the year ahead and what you want to achieve and blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, this is the time. We're doing really well. We'd actually had a fantastic year last year, brought on some great clients, done some brilliant work. And most importantly, there is brilliant people in the agency that I have no doubt not only going to continue to take it from strength to strength, but will actually be able to put their own stamp on it, their own mark. I think sometimes when it's your baby, you can be a bit sort of, no, I don't want to do that. That's not going to work. I've been there, seen it, done it. And I think without the constraint of me and with Graham there, minute by minute, day by day, they'll be able to make some different decisions, do things that potentially we wouldn't have done if we were there. And it's, I think really important for me to be able to let go and give them the autonomy to do that. And I've got absolute confidence in them to do that. I'm really, really excited to see how they're going to take the brand on. And then, so it was in my head we agreed it all at the beginning of the year, and we wanted to do a sort of steady transition so we were able to manage it with staff, with clients, and it didn't come as sort of a surprise or a shock or a disappointment to anyone. I think actually it probably was the reverse. They're glad to get rid of me. So we announced it. So it was always agreed, we'll announce it in, I think the date was sort of middle of April. And then, of course, COVID happened. Yeah. And I to this day just think it's so crazy that we never even considered it, discussed it, thought about it. And so I'm sitting there thinking, my God, I've had like 20 years effectively to make a decision to do something different. And I've chosen to do it right in the middle of a pandemic. And we sort of had a chat about it and thought, do we delay it? Do we carry on with it? And we pretty quickly came to the decision, let's just, get on with it. Everything will be fine. And for me personally, I was thinking, wow, this is weird. I'm like doing this. My initial feeling was I'm doing this at the worst possible time I could be doing it from a personal point of view, not from a Frank point of view necessarily. And I, actually realized probably done it at a great time because it's weird. It's like we started the agency in 2000. The dot-com crash was just sort of happening, not a particularly good time economically. Then, when we went through that earn-out period I was talking about earlier, the financial crash happened sort of right at the beginning of it. And actually that was probably one of the most successful periods in the history of Frank. And now, and I know that, and I don't want to be sort of premature about it because, as I said, I'm sort of really very fresh to this new stage in my career. But I think opportunity is everywhere. And of course, there are industries that are impacted, people that are impacted, and it's, this is something that is on a scale to nothing that I've ever seen before from a business perspective. But at the same time, I think sometimes adversity brings out the best in people in terms of being entrepreneurial, thinking differently, pivoting their business ideas. And honestly, my phone has not stopped ringing for 3 weeks. And
it's amazing.
It is amazing. I mean, who knows what it would be like if the world was in a normal place. But I don't feel like, God, I'm sitting here and what a time to be out on my own, and doesn't feel like that at all. In fact, sometimes I sort of sit in my office at home and I forget that the world is in chaos until I sort of go downstairs and put on Sky News. Like it's strange, but I've always loved working with entrepreneurs and founders and people that run businesses. And I just feel this great energy to just get through this period and come out stronger from the blocks and build something differently. And I'm quite a positive person, sometimes annoyingly so, but I
can feel that. It's great.
I just don't believe in, look, we can all feel sorry for ourselves and aren't things and isn't the world terrible? Or you can think, look, things aren't great, but it's within my destiny to a certain degree to do things my way, get out of it, make the best of a bad situation. And I don't know, I always think, I've thought it with Frank and I think it with myself, you attract people that think in the same way as you and respond to the way that you behave. And, the conversation, I haven't really had that many conversations with people that are all doom and gloom. They're not eternal optimists. And some of the businesses that I'm speaking to and working with, they're having a terrible time at the moment, but they're figuring out how to come out of that. I think, we're now 3 months into lockdown, something like that. The good businesses, the good business people have figured out the survival stage, i.e. how do we avoid going under? How do we preserve our cash flow? How do we reduce our costs so that we can just keep the ship sailing? And they're now shifted into like, look, this is going to end. It's not going to sort of go back to normal with a click of a finger, but we're emerging through it, and the world is starting to get back to a place that it once was. How do we make sure we're in the best position possible? What do we need to do to come out fighting? And these are the conversations that I'm having, every single day. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge. No one can say, well, the last time there was COVID, this is what we did. This is new for all of us, which I find, really exciting. I mean, it's clearly what's gone on is absolutely unimaginable. It's so hard to comprehend. And I'm not being sort of dismissive about the situation by being positive, because there's a whole world of shit that I've had to deal with as well. But I just don't believe you should be defeatist and let something like this beat you. You've got to see the positives from it. And there are positives. And I think every organization, whatever they do in whatever area, whatever size, whatever scale, wherever they are in the world, they've had to adapt and learn to do things differently. And out of that process of having to adapt, I would think that the majority of them have seen positives from certain aspects of what they've done. And it's about how you take those positives and build forward. And what I've been saying to a lot of people is, don't let yourself fall into the trap of, when things are normal, whatever that looks like, again, going back to doing things how you did it before. There's been some really, really valuable lessons in terms of how to run a business, how to work with people, how to adapt to consumer moods, requirements, needs. Take those learnings, and when you come out, build and adapt your business from those positives that you've taken out of it. Don't just slip back to the old ways of doing things. And I'm confident that most people will do that. I mean, everyone you speak to have seen some positives, not obviously all positives, but they're there.
That's a really important perspective that needs to be highlighted during this tough time. People need to kind of think about the scenario and, as you say, look for the good points in that scenario and take advantage of them and push yourself forward.
Totally.
I just thought we'd go back a little bit with regards to your career.
Skipped over 20 years pretty quickly.
No, it's fine. What's wonderful is there's a lot of passion coming out in this conversation, and that's what everyone wants to hear, including myself. But I just wanted to talk about Frank as an agency. It won Agency of the Year 3 times in Marketing Magazine, is that right?
Yeah, it has. I mean, look, you take awards with a pinch of salt, but they are a validation of the work that you're doing. And it was always my view that, to be honest, I never really wanted to pick up the phone and make cold new business calls to clients. So we figured the best way to attract clients is to do good work. And putting it really simplistically, you do good work, you attract good people, they do more good work, you attract clients, they stay with you, they come to you. So really for us, awards was all about showing that we can consistently deliver good work year in, year out, across different sectors for different clients. And I don't know, agencies can get a bit over obsessed with awards. There's dozens of different awards out there, some of them more meaningful than others, but actually Marketing Magazine, which is now sort of rebranded as Brand Republic under the sort of Campaign, PR Week, Haymarket banner, it was one of the only awards, if not the only award, that you couldn't put yourself forward for. It was basically awarded by the editorial staff of that publication, who are obviously sort of marketing experts. So to win that, well, we ended up winning it. Well, I say ended up, we could still win it again. We've won it 3 times outright and sort of been runners up quite a few times as well. But for me, it was proper. It wasn't, we didn't put ourselves in for it. Wasn't voted for by a sort of arbitrary sort of judging panel. This was experts sort of voting for us. So I've always been really, really proud of that.
Out of those 3 awards, what was the project that really meant a lot to you out of those accolades?
Oh, God. So the first time we won it, so Frank, the first few years of Frank, we were doing some really nice work. And as you're building the agency, you're sort of building the brands that you attract. And we did a campaign in, I think it must have been about 2004, 2005, which will remain one of my favorite campaigns of all time. And the client was HP Brown Sauce. And this, obviously a very well-known product that sits in the cupboards of most households. And you might be a ketchup person, you might be a brown sauce person. And they gave us this brief, and it was a really boring brief. It was like, how can we get people to use it more by creating recipes, using brown sauce? And I'm sitting there thinking, no bloody recipes for brown sauce. You put it in a bacon sandwich, that's sort of it. It goes well with a fry up, but how many recipes are people going to take seriously? So we sort of ripped up the brief and looked at it in a different way. And we sort of thought, HP sauce, quintessentially British. Everyone knows it. It's one of those products that if you talk about it and it's front of mind, you think about using it. So let's just do something to sort of win the hearts and minds of the nation that, isn't necessarily related to food. It just sort of plays in the territory of part of the fabric of British society. So anyway, we went through this process. We looked at all different sort of British things. We landed up somehow with the sport of snooker, very, very British game. We thought, what could we do that's interesting and unique? And somehow or other, and I don't know to this day how we managed to persuade them to do it, but we managed to get the World Snooker Organization to allow us to become the first ever brand to sponsor a ball in snooker, which was obviously the brown ball. So we did this deal. I can't take credit for doing the deal. It was a girl called Tracy Zeta, who was the most unbelievable salesperson and could sell any idea to anyone. She convinced them to do it. And then we thought, okay, miracle, we've done it. And I remember pitching the idea to the client, and they were like, look, if you can do this, it's genius, but we're not convinced you can do it. And we did it. And then we thought, okay, let's commemorate the deal by getting Jimmy White, who at the time, one of the most famous snooker players on the circuit. I mean, still around
Jimmy White
today, actually. So we convinced Jimmy White to commemorate the deal by changing his name by deed poll to Jimmy Brown.
Oh my God.
For the duration of the Masters snooker tournament, which was being televised.
That's
on
amazing.
The BBC. And he loved it. He thought it was really funny, and he said yes, and he was going to wear a brown sort of pinstripe suit and brown bow tie and change his name to Jimmy Brown. And we did all the paperwork. He legally changed his name.
Wow.
And then we thought, what we'd do, rather than just announce it and it's sort of this overt PR stunt, which would work, but let's sort of put a bit of a twist on it. So rather than send out a press release on it, we worked with Jimmy's lawyers to write a letter to all of the broadcasters, predominantly the BBC, telling them about this name change and instructing them that if they didn't call him by the name Jimmy Brown, he wouldn't play. And the BBC sort of played right into our hands and went mad. And they wrote back and said, this is a commercial deal. We're the BBC, we're independent, we're impartial, we can't promote a brand. The lawyers wrote back and said, where's the brand? We're not calling him Jimmy HP, we're calling him Jimmy Brown. That's a colour, Anyway, the resulting talkability was just like nothing I'd ever seen. It was in every paper, all over the news. It was talked about in comment sections. Unfortunately, it was sort of pre-social media days. I mean, it would have gone even more crazy if it was done today. And the coverage was everywhere. And then I remember there was a couple of key moments. I remember seeing him appear on stage, and they didn't know what to do. They'd got themselves in such a fluster, the BBC, because they're obviously, take themselves very seriously. And he was they decided they wouldn't call him Jimmy Brown, but they wouldn't call him Jimmy White. And they'd just call him the Whirlwind, which was his nickname. And they there was one commentator said something along like, you know him as Jimmy White. We've been told to call him Jimmy Brown. Everyone's been talking about it. We're just going to call him the Whirlwind.
Wow.
And like the whole crowd that was watching it was at Wembley Arena were like cheering and going mad. And then the sort of compare sort of said, Jimmy, you know, it's been mad. You know, tell us about what's been going on. And, you know, on the BBC, he's sort of saying, yeah, it's been mad. You know, HP Source came up to me, asked me to change my name to Jimmy Brown. So I've done it and I'm now James Brown. And everyone was cheering. And then we'd gone down to watch it live, me, Graham, a couple of other people. And as we're walking into Wembley, I can see all this merchandise. And it's nothing that we've done. And it's T-shirts of Jimmy holding an HP Source bottle and like, we love James Brown T-shirts and everything. I was like, wow, this is talkability. You know, we'd taken an idea, we'd planted it with the media, and then it's taken on a whole new life of its own to the point where, you know, vendors are actually making branded HP Source merchandise and selling it. It was incredible. And that is a very long-winded way of saying that was I think the campaign that properly opened everyone's eyes to what Frank could do. And that was the first year we won Agency of the Year. And I love that campaign. I mean, I still sometimes speak to Jimmy White from time to time and we laugh about it. And now I do a lot of work with Ronnie O'Sullivan and he's always saying to me, like, can't you do this for me? Can't you come up with something like that? It was just such a fun campaign. And it's a campaign that, as I say, sort of really defines the ethos of what talkability is all about. And of course, now technology's changed, the world's evolved, and social media is such a powerful thing to be able to take a concept like that and spread it overnight, or not even overnight, within seconds, the push of a button, you've taken an idea and just let it out there and it can just take on a whole life of its own. And in the early days of Frank, that sort of platform wasn't there. Brands didn't have own channels. They didn't have social media platforms. Celebrities didn't have a way that they could talk about what they were doing. So now the potential of talkability is even greater. And that's why it's always remained relevant to the agency.
With your time working within PR, and I know it's still ongoing, what was the best brand that you worked with?
I mean, we have been fortunate enough to work with some of the world's biggest brands. And genuinely, I always feel it's a privilege when a brand sort of picks up the phone and calls you and says, would you be interested? It's like, I still to this day think, what? How do you know about us? What we're amazing. To me, it's not so much who the brand is. It's about who the client is and what they allow you to do. So, you know, like take HP Source as an example. On the face of it, pretty boring. So a bottle of brown sauce, like I can't personally get too excited about a bottle of brown sauce. You take the client behind that brand who is brave, who has allowed us to challenge that brief and rip it up and give them something completely different. That's what makes a great client. And we've done, I mean, honestly, so many campaigns over the years for so many brilliant clients. And like I said, I think one of the things I've always felt is important with any agency is being able to get across your brand values, who you are. And, you know, the name Frank was about being open, honest, to the point, no bullshit. It was also a bit of a play on that sort of Lynn Frank's heritage and the creativity of that great agency that we wanted to reference and keep alive. But being frank with clients, which actually was very much sort of, Graham and I were not your sort of typical PR people, whatever a typical PR person was, but we were always, you know, just pretty straight talking, no bullshit. Just if we didn't think something was right or didn't like an idea, we wouldn't bluff our way through it. We'd always give a sort of honest opinion on what we thought. And actually those frank values are more important today than they ever have been. And brands today can't just spin out stories and pointless stunts and meaningless sort of gestures. You have to have integrity at the core of your organization. Consumers can see through bullshit, and brands that don't have the right values, the right way of communicating, just aren't going to succeed in the world today. So actually that Frank name that we came up with all those years ago now just feels even more relevant than it ever has been. It started off as more of a reflection on us as the founders of the agency. And now I think the Frank name is about just the world and where it should be and where it needs to be if brands and corporations are going to be successful. It's not just about what you say, it's about what you do, how you act. And the whole area of corporate and social purpose it's a must-have for any brand.
You've been listed into the PR Week Power Book, the definitive guide to the most influential people in PR. When did that happen and what has that done for you?
So PR Week, which is the Bible of the PR industry, I think started in about 2007-ish, producing this book of who they deemed to be the most influential people in PR. And I guess the way that they define that would be, it might be influence in terms of the amount of people you employ, the clients you represent, your influence as a voice in the industry to the outside world. I think it's sort of the top 1% in the industry, and it's compiled by the editorial team at PR Week, and then I think they sort of work with a panel of experts within the industry to help sort of define it each year and pull it together. And then every year they release this list. And I have been fortunate enough to sort of be in it every year since they started publishing it. So I think this year was my, 13th appearance in it. And it's lovely. I mean, you can never, it's, I think, quite a humbling thing. There's so many brilliant people in this industry. And so to be recognised in that way is always really nice. And I always send a copy of it to my mum and dad. Keeps them happy. I don't know. Look, you can't let these things go to your head. I don't know if it makes any difference or not. I think it's, a nice feeling to be recognised. And actually, my favourite bit about it is they have a party every year to sort of where they invite the people that have been in the book, who are in the book that year, to have a drink. And it's always a great gathering. I mean, it's one of the best things about this industry is the people. And, a lot of the people in the book have passed through the doors of Frank at some stage in their career. And wow. It's lovely to catch up and see everyone, have a gossip, moan. Actually, this year's Power Book party was potentially actually the last time I went out to a public gathering. I remember, I think it was early March, and we were all sort of joking about a little bit and not shaking hands and doing the sort of fist bump or the elbow touch or those sort of embarrassing things that corporate people do when they're far too old to try and be street. But we were sort of joking about it. And it was referenced, Danny Rogers, who's the editor-in-chief, sort of referenced it in his speech. And then I think the hit the fan like a week later or something like that. So it was actually one of the last times I went out to anything other than a sort of walk in the park or sort of meeting my family at arm's length. So it was a really nice...
What has that done for you?
I don't know. I don't know how important it is to other people. It's, I think it's nice to get external recognition. I don't think it should really ever go to your head. And I don't know how important it would be to other people that you're in it. It's a good question. I genuinely don't know. I think I've always been really proud to be in it. I think if I'm being completely honest, I'd be a little bit sad if I got sort of dropped out of it one year. And there's some brilliant people I know that sort of have gone in and out of the book, and they're, equally disappointed to be out of it, as excited as they were to go into it. But there's, new, young, great talent emerging every year within the industry. And obviously, as new people come in, some people have to come out. So there will be a day potentially next year where I'm not in the list. But, you know, I've had a decent run in it and I'll enjoy it. Maybe I should start lobbying for my place, but I don't know. Look, I don't know how much difference any of these things make. I always feel, I don't know, look, being in PR, you should be good at doing your own PR, and you should never sort of be embarrassed to be able to talk about yourself and your company. But at the same time, I don't know if I'd describe myself as humble, because that's probably taken things a little bit too far. But I've always felt a bit uncomfortable talking about myself. I'd much rather be behind the people or the organisations that I'm representing and let them sort of speak for me. But at the same time, of course, you know, you have to promote yourself, you have to promote your brand. And if you can't do that, then you're not a very good PR person. So I think it's just doing it in a way that people don't think, what a tosser. Think that about me, although I'm sure there's quite a few people that do. You know, that's life. You can't believe
that is life. Yeah. Tell us about your relationship with Lord Sugar. You speak on behalf of him. How did you meet him, and what is your relationship like with him?
So about 3 months into Frank, we had the opportunity to pitch for the Amstrad business. Nick Hewer, who was his PR for many, many years, and is now sort of better known for being his sidekick on The Apprentice and hosting Countdown, had worked for him for years, but was retiring, and they were pitching out their business. We had the opportunity to pitch, and it was a great opportunity. We were like extremely excited about the opportunity. And I think we basically pitched like a Rolls-Royce solution when effectively all they needed really was a Mini. And I remember the feedback from the marketing director at the time, and it was something along the lines of, you know, love you guys, love how much effort you put into this, but got to be honest, we don't really need that. We just need a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So we're going to go with this. We found this other agency who just gave us sort of more of what we needed at this time. And we put down the phone, and I was like, you know, that's like such a big opportunity that we've just up. And then we were like, no, we're not going to take that. Like we can do the basic stuff. Just because we sort of presented this over-ambitious, overly creative thing doesn't mean that we can't do what they want. So we picked up the phoned them and said, look, give us a chance. You know, we really want to do this. We can do the basics. They felt sorry for us and they said yes. And we ended up launching a product for them. And I hadn't met Lord Sugar, or Sir Alan as he was at the time, and then sort of met him briefly during the launch of this product. And I think, honestly, my strategy at the time was let me stay away from him. Like, let's just prove ourselves. And I don't need to suck up to him. He's the chairman of the company. Like, he's not really that interested in what the PR company had done. You know, let me just do a good job of talking to the marketing director and the person that was effectively paying our invoices. And then over time, got to know him and built a relationship with him to the point where it sort of moved from looking after his businesses to working with him. And, you know, the Apprentice opportunity came up in 2005, and he was incredibly excited by that opportunity, and he'd watched the show in the States and seen how well it had done there. And when he got selected to be the host of that show, you know, it gave him this new vigor and energy. And it started off in the early years of The Apprentice, the winner would win £100,000 job within the organisation. And, you know, I would help promote that winner and what they were doing. And then about 7 years into the show, they changed the format a bit. And one of the challenges with this £100,000 job is it kind of put the noses up of other people within his organisations, because you'd have these really hardworking people that were not earning as much. And suddenly this kind of TV star, in inverted commas, would rock up into the organisation and think they're the bee's knees, be earning double the amount they were, but actually probably doing a job that was no different to what they're doing. It sometimes was a bit problematic. So they changed the format, and now the format is whoever wins the show gets a £250,000 investment into their business from Lord Sugar, and it's a joint venture. And my role in that process is to work with that winner and help them make that transition from being a TV personality that's famous for sort of being a character on a TV show into being a credible business person. And over the 7 years, there's been all different sorts of businesses. There was, Tom, the inventor. There's been Dr. Leah, who has the clinical beauty outlets. There's been Mark Wright, who owns Climb Online, which is the social media search.
We had him on the show actually a couple of weeks ago.
The best salesman I've ever met. And I love him to pieces. He's brilliant. Ricky, the recruitment guy who's got hyper recruitment. There's been a whole host of them this year. Karina Lepore, who's got a bakery. So I work with them and help them establish themselves as credible business people, help them build their businesses. And then, aside from that, work with Lord Sugar on the sort of day-to-day side of things, of everything that happens in his life. And, you never meet anyone with more going on than him. Every day brings with it different opportunities, different challenges. So, we've been working together for about 20 years, sort of coming up for 20 years. And that was something that when I stepped back from my day-to-day role from Frank was one of the things that I wanted to continue doing. So now I'm working with him outside of Frank and just continuing doing what I've always done for him. And obviously those relationships are quite personal relationships built on trust and knowledge built up over the years. So it's something that I value and really enjoy working with him.
Amazing. Tell us about the Super Brand Council.
Super Brands Council is something I got involved in a couple of years ago. It's a book that is published every year on the strongest brands that are out there. And they come to the decision on those brands by working with council members, of which I am one, who help them basically figure out which brands to put into the book. So there's a process that you go through sort of 6 months in advance of publication, which looks at the contender brands, and you judge and come to a decision, and then a book is published, and it's the strongest brands, the super brands of that year.
How long have you been doing that for?
A couple of years. So the last 2 books I've done, and I've done the judging for this year, which I'm not sure when the book comes out. I think in the next couple of months actually, but I did the judging for that a few months ago. So it's quite nice to be asked for your opinion, and obviously I'm looking at it sort of through a communications lens, looking at what they've been doing, how they've sort of grown, built their reputation.
Amazing. We're coming towards the end. I just wanted to ask you just a couple more questions, if that's okay, before we go into the outro. Sure. With regards to you on your current venture, you said 3 weeks old, is that right?
Yeah, I think, 3 weeks in a few days, 2.5.
Who are you working with now?
So I'm carrying on my work with Lord Sugar and still working with the apprentice businesses. I am still sort of in this non-exec role at Frank. And then it's a good question, and I'm not avoiding the answer. No. But what I deliberately wanted to do was sort of see what comes to me and not be too prescriptive in telling people what I wanted to do. Because being honest, I didn't exactly know how it would evolve or what it would be. So my sort of strategy for myself is let's just sort of tell people I'm available and see what happens. So what has happened is there's a couple of parts to what I've been doing. One part is people are phoning me and saying, can you do my PR? And actually, I don't really want to do PR myself for too many people, because I guess, I've sort of moved on from actually doing PR. I understand it inside out, but I'm used to having a team of people around me. So what I've essentially started to do is build up almost like a referral business. So I think the world of marketing is quite confusing, and brands often don't know which agency to work with, not just in PR, but digital marketing, performance marketing, social media, sponsorship. So I've got this network that I've built up of the best people in these industries from all different sort of scales and sizes, ranging from sort of big agencies down to one-man bands and experts. And I've been referring bits of business that have come to me to the best people in the industry and taking a commission or being paid a fee to consult on who they should be. So that's been one part of what I've been doing. I've had some quite interesting businesses that have come to me and I've placed in other places. And then the other part of what I've been doing, which is at an earlier stage, is helping agencies that want to build, grow, develop their new business, one in the branding space. And then the final part is I guess, I keep calling it the grown-up bit, but I don't know if it is any more grown-up than anything else. But it's advisory boards. So I've actually joined my first advisory board, which hasn't been announced yet, but I guess will be announced by the time you put this podcast out, so I can tell you. Okay. It's a fantastic business called Propel, and what they do, they're the leaders in PR CRM. So effectively, they make PR easy, and They have a database of every single media outlet, social media influencer out there. So they help you sort of find who you want to pitch to. And then they built this brilliant CRM tracking system that allows you, first of all, to pitch out using your own email inbox or Gmail, which is a real benefit if you're in PR. Most of the other systems that sort of play in this area do it on their own system, and this does it directly via your email. Then they allow you to track those conversations. And for me, what is most important, I mean, and it's got social listening and all these kind of things, you can find the right media to pitch to that are relevant, that have written about similar stories to you. But then they allow you to actually track the results. You can see which media have opened your emails, read them. You can see when they publish something, where it's gone, how many links to your website or your business that's had, and you can integrate it with your Google Analytics, so you can actually see a demonstrable business impact from that bit of media. And to me, that's a killer piece of functionality, because for a PR agency, it allows them to demonstrate the ROI of what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, I've joined their advisory board, and I think, putting it simply, this is a brilliant business that is like tech geniuses behind it. And they built an advisory board of experts in the tech space from New York, from Israel, from all over the world, but they didn't have a PR person on the board. And actually, it was founded, this business, by a guy called Zach Cutler, who ran a PR agency in New York, sold the agency, and used the money from his sale to set up this business. And they've attracted funding already, and now they're going second stage of funding. But he wanted someone that really understood the industry, could help them package it in a way that is compelling to the industry, both agencies and in-house, and then sell it to those people. So that's my role, and that's what I'm doing. So I'm sitting on their board, and so that's the first role that I've done. There's two more that I'm in discussions with at sort of contractual stage, which could take a little bit of time to get over the line. And suddenly I found myself being quite busy. And actually, one of the reasons that I haven't mentioned so far of why I wanted to sort of take this move was a work-life balance thing. And running an agency is bloody hard work, takes everything, relentless.
Right.
And part of it was, I mean, I'm a hard worker. I wouldn't describe myself as a workaholic, but I absolutely love what I do and put every hour of energy into it. And I wanted to be able to step back a bit. I mean, by no means is this retirement or semi-retirement, but it is about being able to pick up my kids from school, to go to school sports day, to have them with me in the afternoon if I want to, that kind of stuff. So what I've got to learn and what I've so far been absolutely terrible at in the last few weeks is getting this sort of work-life balance right and working on my own terms on the hours that I want to work. So I don't want to fill my time 100% because it would sort of defeat a big part of the reason why I've done this in the first place.
Absolutely.
So that is what I'm doing, and it's kept me pretty busy so far, and it's constantly evolving. And, maybe in a few months or 6 months, I will work out a way to explain exactly what I'm doing and package it a little bit better. But I actually don't want to do that now because I think it will evolve, and I want to just let it evolve and see enjoying what I'm not. And I figure, as I start to talk about these various things like this Propel role, it will actually, people will start to think, oh, that could be good for me. I could do with that sort of person. And that's how it will sort of play out. Whereas if it's not like launching an agency where you want to define what you're doing and make it really clear from day one, because that's what an agency should do. This is about me personally. And honestly, I don't know exactly which bits I'm going to do more or less of going forward, because I want to see what I enjoy the most, really.
Absolutely.
And then I'll sort of evolve as I've learned. Consultant in the marketing and communications and creative space, and that sort of keeps it pretty open to doing whatever I want to do, whatever that may be.
Absolutely. And this next stage is for you to explore, and that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful moment in your life. So I really respect that.
It was quite nice.
Awesome. So Andrew, we're coming to the end of the show. I just want to say thank you so much for this. This has been extraordinary. Your stories are not only interesting, but they're also very inspiring. And I'm sure a lot of people listening would have got that too. How's the best way to get in contact with you?
However you want. I'm easily findable via Google, but I'm on Twitter at Andrew Bloch. I'm on Instagram at Blockstagram. I'm on LinkedIn. Just search under my name. You can email me. My email is ab@andrewbloch.co.uk. And that should be enough options. I mean, I'm an easy person to find. So
awesome.
If you want me, you can find me.
Andrew, seriously, it's been really good having you on the show. I'm sure there's a lot more that you've got to say, and I'd love to get you on another show in the future if possible.
Sure. Yeah, no, I do enjoy talking about myself like everyone does when given the opportunity. So, but I've enjoyed it too. So hopefully people will enjoy listening to it.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah, if you want me back, then I'm around.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for your time listening to this. Please do share the social media hashtag, which is Tiger Heart Chats, all one word. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay safe and be good.